Hello, and wherever you are, it's my pleasure to welcome you to Cross-Cultural Experience, where I have a guest who has moved from the original culture to another place and has an exciting experience. Today, my guest is Sahar. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Uche. I appreciate the invitation.
All right, please tell us a little about yourself.
Okay, my name is Sahar Khamis. I'm a professor of communication. My area of expertise is Arab and Muslim media. I am Egyptian American, born and raised in Egypt, and I taught at different universities around the world, including American University in Cairo, which is also where I got my BA and MA from. And then I got my PhD from the University of Manchester in England. I also taught at the University of Maryland, and of course, I've been teaching there since 2007 up till now. So it's like a good 17 years. I even cannot believe I'm saying 17 years, but it's really an incredibly long time. But
Uh,
that's how long I've been there. And before joining Maryland in 2007, I've been also teaching in Qatar University in Doha. And I was the head of the mass communication and information science department there. I was in Doha between 2004 and 2007. And when I was doing my PhD at University of Manchester, I also taught there as a graduate student. So as you can tell, I'm really a world traveler
all
and
right,
I
I
love
can count. I
traveling.
can count four of them.
No, I traveled to more than 26 countries actually.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I lived and studied and worked in these four places:
All right.
Egypt, England, Doha, Qatar, and the United States. That's where I actually resided, lived for a substantial period of time and taught. But beside that, I've also been traveling internationally to attend conferences, to give, keynote talks, to participate in different workshops and events, and to also do some tourism and sightseeing. So in total, the countries I visited so far is 26 and counting.
And that is a very active life. Can I say assalamu alaikum?
Alaikum salam. Thank you
Uh,
so much for the Muslim greeting. I
All right.
appreciate
So
that.
let's go into maybe one or two experiences. I mean, given the time at your disposal, what was the experience that you would like to share with people?
All right. So hold your breath for this one, Uche.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm holding it.
I was 15 years old when I actually joined a program, a foreign exchange program called AFS, American Field Services, which is a program that allows students from different parts of the world to visit the United States and allows American students in return to visit different countries around the world. And of course, I was very young and it was my first time coming to America at that time. And I told myself, I'm going to be coming back to this country again. And indeed, that happened, but many years later, not as a student, but as a professor. Anyway, the experience I want to share is they sent us first to a camp in New York to give us some kind of orientation for all the students coming from different countries around the world. And then they put us on buses after that to go to our host families. And my host family was actually a very nice family, a retired nurse and a retired school teacher, very cozy home, an elderly couple in a small hill in Ohio, in a small town that nobody heard about. It's called Blair, Ohio, but I promise
Okay.
you it exists because I was there for a whole year. All right.
Okay. I
When I say
believe you.
Blair,
I
in
believe
Ohio, they
you.
say, what? Where is that? I'm like, please, just believe me. I'm not making this up. I lived there for a whole year. So the part here, which is really, really funny, is this experience. In my Egyptian culture, if somebody comes to your home as a guest, you always assume that the guest is shy. He or
Oh,
she is not going to ask for food. And if you offer them food, they're always going to say, no, 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 thank you. I'm full. No, no, no. And then it is your job and your responsibility as a host to keep asking once, twice, thrice, four times, five times, 10 times
okay.
until the guest finally, gives up and says, okay, okay, all right, just to please you, I'm gonna, ask for some food. That's fine. If only you insist. That's the culture, right?
Okay.
So I went to this, host family's home. It was my first night there. Remember, I was coming from Egypt. I was coming from New York. It's been a
Yeah.
very long flight, a very long trip. I was exhausted and I was starving. And when
Okay.
I got there, of course, there were the greetings. Thank you so much for hosting me, all of that stuff. And then I sat down And the host mother asked me, would you like to have some dinner? And of course, coming from my Egyptian culture, I have to say no. And it's her
Oh,
responsibility to keep insisting
okay.
until I finally say yes. So that's my expected cultural framework. So I sat there. She said, "Do you want to have some dinner?" I said, "No." And of course, I'm expecting her to say, "No, you should really have to eat something. You must eat something. You should eat something." None of that happened. She said, "Okay, let me show you your room." And I was like, "Oh my
God.
God, what did I just do to myself?" My cultural expectation was that she's going to be asking again and again and again and
Repeatedly,
again
yeah.
and again until I finally just say reluctantly, "Okay, only if you insist," because that's
Yes.
the cultural framework I'm coming from. None of
Okay.
that happened, Uche, and I slept that night starving.
You didn't eat at all.
I didn't because, when I said to her no, she just said, "I'm going to show
Good,
you your room." She
good
took me
night.
to my room in order for me to sleep.
Yeah.
So coming from her American cultural framework, if you say no,
Oh,
it means no. Coming from my Egyptian cultural framework, I'm going to say no, of course, as a guest,
yes.
but she's supposed to be insisting until I finally say yes. So I learned my lesson. In the morning, when it was
Uh-huh.
time for breakfast, I was starving. And when she said, "Do you want to have some breakfast?" I immediately said, "Yes, please."
Yes.
I'm never going to repeat this mistake again. So if I'm offered something in America, I just say yes. Yes, please. You
Bring
know,
it. Let's get it done with.
I learned my lesson the hard way, Uche. I slept that night really, really starving,
Yeah.
tired, exhausted, and starving. And in the morning, when I was offered a breakfast, I just said immediately, "Yes,
Let's go
please."
for it. Yeah. No,
Let's
but
go for it.
did
So
you
that
have a
was one of
chance to
my first,
explain?
yes, it was
Yeah.
one of my first cultural encounters. Like you can really say cultural shock.
Yes. Yes.
Because it was really my expectation that she's gonna be asking again and again. Also,
Again.
it was my expectation based on everything I have been watching on American movies and American soap operas that I'm gonna
Yes.
come to this big mansion that is huge and has a swimming pool in the back, and people are always partying and having a good time, because that is the image I always got from American soap operas and American movies and dramas,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
So instead, I end up in this small, cozy home up a hill in Blair, Ohio, with, this retired nurse, retired, teacher who are very nice, warm people. But I'm looking around me and I'm like, where is the mansion? Where is the swimming pool?
Where is
Where
the
is the
limousine?
party? Exactly. And because at the time when I grew up, it's like, movies, or there was soap operas like
Right. Correct.
Dallas,
Yeah.
all of that stuff, which was really Knots Landing, showing, these, very rich, American families. They have a ranch, they have their own farm, they have a
Right.
huge, huge mansion and a big swimming pool. None of that happened. And when I looked around me, I did not find any of that. I could not help it. So after a couple of days, I told my host parents, like, "Wait a minute, I really have to tell you something." They said, "What?" I said, "Based on all the American movies and soap operas I have been watching for years, I was
Yeah.
expecting to land in this huge mansion with a swimming pool and wild parties." And they said, "Sorry, Sahar, we are sorry to disappoint you, but none of
Oh.
that exists here. We are just a hardworking couple who retired, and we
Yeah.
are, a Catholic, Christian family. We're very conservative. We don't throw wild parties, and, we don't have any of that stuff." So it was like, okay, that's another cultural shock.
Shock.
The third cultural shock, which also has to do with the same host family as well,
Yeah.
was after a couple of days, I settled down, and my, Catholic Christian host mother sat me down and said, "Sahar, I really have to have a conversation with you." I said, "Yes,
Okay.
what?" She said, "You are only 15, and we are a Catholic Christian conservative family. So you cannot start dating until you are 16.
Okay.
I looked at her with a complete shock. I said, "I'm afraid my family is a little bit more conservative. We don't date at all."
So, let's put it this way. her being conservative was even too liberal for you.
Exactly. Like you see, the cultural frames are working both ways, right?
Yeah, yeah,
She was shocked at that moment, and I was equally shocked,
yes,
right? Both of us were shocked. Like the woman really was like, you know, you should have seen her face, the poor thing. You should have seen her face. And I was shocked also. I was like, you know, because when she said, you know, I'm going to sit you down, talk to you, I thought she's going to talk about, you know, security, having an
right.
extra key to the back door, you know,
Yeah,
whatever, you know, if you come late and there's nobody in the home, that's what you need to do. Here is an emergency number you need to call, whatever. I was just thinking about safety and security. That's what I
and
had in
then,
mind. I did not expect at all that we're going to have this other weird, strange cultural encounter with a
right.
discussion that was very brief, very abrupt, but very shocking to both of us, both ways. When she said,
Yes,
you know, conservative, you know, Christian, Catholic family, I said, fine, that's awesome, because that also fits
uh,
my conservative, you know, religious
background.
upbringing, which is like
Right.
awesome.
Yeah.
And then she said, you're only 15. I said, you cannot date until you reach 16. Like, excuse me? What? What are you even talking about?
We don't date at all.
We don't do that. Like we don't usually, you know, we don't go out with guys before there is at least a formal engagement. Like the guy has
Right.
to come to your home and ask for your hand, and he has to be approved by the family. And then
Yes.
you can start to go out with him within also certain boundaries.
Boundaries.
You
Okay.
know what I'm saying?
What
Like
was her experience? Can you tell me how did she react to that?
she was shocked. Like for a second, she was just speechless. She said absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And then she said, can you say that again? Did I just hear that right? Did you just say that you don't date at all? And I said, yeah, you heard that correctly. So you don't need to worry about me when I turn 16.
Yes.
No, no worries whatsoever. And if I turn 17, 18, you still don't have to get worried about that because we simply don't date before marriage. And both of us had this, you know, very brief, short, but really, really shocking cultural encounter
I
with both
know.
of us completely, totally, culturally shocked both ways, right? So, you know, these were three anecdotes. Really, all of them are related to my wonderful, warm, you know, host family in America who
Family.
hosted me for a whole
Okay.
year.
All
But you
right.
can really see the cultural encounter in these three things. In these three things I mentioned when I arrived at the home, and you know, no thank you, I don't need any dinner, and I learned my
And then
lesson the hard way.
Hollywood was not there.
The Hollywood expectation that you see in Dallas and Knots Landing was
Yeah.
not there. And you know, they had to say sorry that, you know, what you see in Dallas and Knots Landing, that does not represent our, you know, middle class hardworking family.
Yes.
And of course, after living in America for so many years, Oche, I learned that a lot of these media stereotypes are not true.
Correct. Yes. Yeah,
You know,
that's very important because this is also a learning process. So I
of
was going to
course.
ask you, what did you learn from there? I'm happy you're talking about that.
Of course,
Right?
you know, and it works both ways. I always tell my students in my communication classes,
Yes.
stereotyping works both ways, right? You
Yes.
stereotype others, and others also are stereotyping you. So it goes both
Correct.
ways. So I had my own stereotypes about America and American life, and it all has to look like Hollywood and Knots Landing and Dallas and all of that stuff. And of course, that is not true. I learned that American people are hardworking people. You know, not all of them have this kind of lifestyle. In fact, only
Right.
few of them have this very lavish, luxurious, you know, lifestyle. So that is
Lifestyle.
stereotyping. And it just reminds me when my son came with me to America in 2007, he was only 12 and he went to school and people would ask, oh, you have an accent. Where are you from? He would say,
Yeah.
I'm from Egypt. Egypt. Oh, wow. So you live in the desert? You live in a tent? Do you
Okay.
have a camel? And
Oh,
you know, of course, his schoolmates, they're young, you know, they're also 12, 13, they're also in middle school, right? So he came
right.
home feeling really upset, like, oh mom, they're asking me about these weird things. Do you have a tent? Do you have a camel? Do you live in the desert? I said two things. Number one, you can turn that into a joke and say,
Yes.
yeah, definitely I have a camel. Its name is Chemo, and I
Yeah.
give it a nickname, and I always ride it to school, you know, just turn it into a joke and then show them pictures. Show
Right.
them pictures of Cairo, of, you know, it's a very, very big
Big.
cosmopolitan city of more than 18 million people.
r-
You know, there are more cars than people. Nobody rides a camel except if you're visiting the pyramids as a tourist. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So I said, just take it easy. Don't feel, stressed out about it. Just show them pictures of Egypt and of Cairo, and also just turn it into a joke. But you can
Uh,
see here the cultural stereotyping and how it works both ways, how other people stereotype your culture, but how
and
you
then,
also stereotype other people's culture. And of
uh,
course, the meeting experience was like a conservative Muslim woman and a conservative Christian Catholic woman coming together face to face for this brief encounter and
right.
discovering, oh, my definition of conservative is not exactly the same like your definition of
It's
conservative.
too liberal.
Your conservative is too liberal for me. Let's
All
keep
right.
it this way.
I know I want to respect your time. I know you have
Thank
other
you.
things doing, but this has been very, very good, hilarious, but with a lot of educational content. And that's the really real aim of this, this forum, so that people can go away knowing that there are other ways of doing things, and then people need to learn from, at least your number one lesson that same night was I cannot be hungry. I cannot go hungry. When they ask me, I just say, bring the food, bring it on.
Lesson learned. It was learned the hard way, but believe me, it was learned. And thank you so much, Uche, for really creating this space for education and learning through humor, jokes, being funny and hilarious, but at the same time, really learning
Learn
about your
something.
culture and other people's culture. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you again. And I would like to wind up by saying that if there's any person watching this, and I hope people are watching, it is called Cross-Cultural Experience. But if you want to reach me, it will be through email, and that is Cross-Cultural Experiences. It has an S at the end, Cross-Cultural Experiences at gmail.com. Cross-cultural experiences at gmail.com. So, Sahar, I want to thank you again. You've made my day, as they say. These are very, very rich. Can you imagine one encounter, 3 experiences and
Yes.
lessons learned?
There you go. One encounter, 3 experiences, and it's all about cultural encounters and learning from them. It's very eye-opening. And thank you so much again.
Thanks again, and have the best of the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Take
Yeah.
care.